okay. So I made this video and I'm mostly happy with it, but when I'm watching it, I noticed my hands are pretty dirty. To be fair, my hands look like this before. So this is an improvement, just not enough around. Well, anyways, sorry about that. Enjoy.
Hello. It's been a little while. It's been actually quite a while. Maybe 3 months since I've recorded anything, I think. Yeah, I took the summer off, I guess. Not really intentionally. Anyhow, so I've got a lot of catching up to do. Last September, I did a thing where I made a video every day for the Trevor Project. If you don't know what the Trevor Project is, it's an organization that tries to give support to youth who's feeling suicidal or something like that, specifically LGBTQ youth. Really good program. I don't know very much about it apart from that. This is not associated with that at all. That was really not exactly associated with it. I was just trying to raise awareness. Anyways, that's just something to know. It's a good thing. But that was kind of the impetus behind last September. And so I'm behind in videos now. Maybe I should make a lot of videos and kind of catch everything up. So you find me in front of a nondescript concrete wall talking about stuff I read. So I talked in one of my last, like 2 videos ago, at the beginning of the summer, about Congo, and that Mike's book reviews, I think that he was talked about it, and that I watch his stuff sometimes, and which I do occasionally, although I don't really watch it like recreationally. Does that seem strange to say? I don't watch the content that I make. I don't really watch other booktube stuff at all, unless it's just sort of to kind of like better understand the format. That's usually why I'm watching it. If I'm watching a booktube video, it's not really because I want to watch and find out about a book. I really don't have a problem finding books, and that's not usually a resource that I use. I don't use the resource that I'm trying to make. I don't know, it's weird. But I usually watch videos like that for me to better understand the format, which is, maybe that's useful. I don't know that it really is. I kind of don't do very much of it at all anymore. But I do like his channel. He does good stuff. He talked about Congo, and I think he said that he liked it. And I've not seen his review. Maybe I'll watch it and then come back and sort of maybe, I don't want to say respond, because it makes it seem like a weird like response video thing that I'm doing, and I'm not really doing that. But maybe I'll come back and say something after I've watched it, if I watch it. Anyways, I read Congo. Long-winded way to say that. I thought it was okay. I liked it at the beginning, and as the book wore on, I became less and less satisfied with it. I thought it was interesting to see that sort of science fiction story from that point of view of, I think that book is from the 70s. It feels like it's from the 70s when I read it. It could be from the early 80s, but I feel like I don't really honestly know when. I'm going to guess mid-70s for that book. I'm not really sure. It's interesting to see like him sort of talking about what for us is sort of maybe not that amazing technology, but how it was really kind of cutting edge or breakthrough, or maybe didn't even exist. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was kind of an interesting time capsule to look at like what technology may have actually been at that time, and what this book presents technology as what it could be and what it was going towards. So I think in that way, very cool. I thought that the discussion about ape intelligence was interesting, but the problem I have is that that may have been well informed for the time period, but there's a line in that book where the book presents itself as though it is factual. But at some point I realized that like this is probably not factual information. In fact, I know some of that stuff about apes is not exactly true. I don't, like obviously those, Amy, the main intelligent ape in Congo, is not a real ape. Or I'm sorry, a real gorilla. I said ape, didn't I? Real gorilla. There's a difference. And I should know the difference. It's not a real gorilla. And so this talking about gorilla intelligence, I thought the general like coverage of gorillas was really interesting. I think I maybe learned a couple things, and which I think is great. But I definitely felt like some of the talk about like a gorilla's intelligence and what they can and can't do in sign language and things like that. I don't believe that those things are true. Now, I've not actually gone and researched that per se after reading this book or while I was reading it. But the reason I think that that's what I say is true is that, seems like a weird thing to say, but when I guess segue. Years ago, a few years ago, maybe 5, I played a game on the PlayStation, Talos Principle. If you don't know what Talos Principle is, it's very similar to Portal. It's kind of like a 3D first-person perspective puzzle game, right? We have these sort of like 3-dimensional puzzles that you go around and you interact with to like solve and like to win the game, right? So that's like what 90% of the game is. But the other like 10% of the game is this like discussion about metaphysics and what is intelligence. And like I enjoy the puzzle part of the game, and I really thought that the metaphysical or sort of like talking about what is intelligence, is essentially the game sort of poses the question is like, how is like robotic intelligence, real robotic intelligence, different than human intelligence? Where is the line? We make a line, but is that line even real? And that was really interesting, actually really compelling and wonderful game. If that even sounds interesting, you should absolutely go play that game. I know that it has like puzzle hints, so if puzzle games are difficult for you, that you should be able to resolve it through that. But I think that those discussions that the game has are really interesting. And I am sorry, but those cicadas or whatever the hell they are super freaking loud for me. I don't know if they are for you. I really can't make them stop. But so that made me really think. It was really kind of like, that game was a real head trip for me when I played it. And it really got me thinking about primates and their intelligence. And I actually remember like looking up like gorillas could sign, and I think that, and like maybe that means that there really are like intelligent beings like us, like they're people, but we're treating them like animals. Like I really had that feeling, and it's like kind of like this sort of like strange thing to be that shocked by your like core assumptions when you're like an adult. That you've had these ideas and assumptions you've had for your entire life. And I thought, my goodness. So I kind of did a little research. Now, I'm not saying my research is 100% or that I'm 100% accurate, but from what I remember, the consensus was, well, gorillas are very intelligent, but they're not exactly like the same kind of intelligence as humans. They don't really quite get there. They're very intelligent, but to say that they are like us, just lacking in the ability to use language, is a little misleading. That to think that the gorillas are intelligent, like the same as humans. Now, mind you, I'm not trying to say that, I'm not trying to devalue animal life or gorillas or apes or any other intelligent animal life, but I do feel personally that there's a distinction between a person and everything else, a human being and everything else. I mean, that's just a personal bias I have. I value human beings more than I value any other animal. Anyways, the research I did kind of led me to think that, well, that was that's fine. It's fine to put value on animals and to respect them, and I absolutely agree with that. But it's misleading to think that they're the same as human beings. So the discussion about Amy in there really, and the gorillas in this book, which I guess this is a spoiler. Well, it's an old book. But they're about them being like actually just lacking the language, and that's where they lack, and that's why, apart from that, that's the only thing that separates them from us, essentially, right? It's like this: if they had access to the language, then eventually they would be able to become like humans, which is, I think, which is an interesting idea, but is absolutely where the science fiction is. That's not true. I'm sure that people have been trying desperately to teach gorillas sign language and things like that, and that it has not proven that those gorillas are sentient. And at least they're not the same as humans. That it isn't just their lack of having a vocabulary that separates them from people. Which that's an interesting thing too. I read another book, which I am not exactly prepared to talk about because I definitely felt like I was in deep water when I read it. But it's a book about language, and just language in general. And I cannot remember who wrote it or even the title of the book. But that's not a problem because I've not finished it, so whatever. But But there's an interesting concept in there that I want to bring up just because I'm thinking about it right now, which is that the communication part of language is like a byproduct of what language is. And it really took me a little while of listening to this audiobook and thinking about what they're trying to say to really understand that it was trying to communicate the idea that language is really like a, I don't know, like something that a section of your brain produces, like a waste product, not exactly a waste, probably like a bile or a secretion or something that your brain, creates. This language center of your brain language is an organ, essentially, is what it says, and it's not just talking. Talking is like just me doing this, the thing where I say things and you can hear these sounds that I make, and your brain can interpret them and create pictures and images in your mind, and we can essentially be not maybe exactly the same, but very similar concepts. We can sort of understand each other by me making sounds. That whole process is all just extra. It's not actually. It's sort of a interesting phenomenon, not exactly the intent. The intent is more about our intelligence, our ability to reason comes from our language, essentially. I'm getting a little bit into the deep water of that part where I may be misinterpreting the book, but I guess I'm drawing from that the idea that like your ability to talk is really a representation of your ability to silently, or within your own head, think and rearrange concepts and ideas to cognitively understand something. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about that because like I said, I'm in deep water there, and I don't necessarily know that I have a great grasp of the book, and probably don't have a wonderful grasp of the concept, but that idea is really interesting to me, super interesting, that the communication is a byproduct of language. I mean, language is like an organ, and that its real true purpose is not exactly communication or the speaking part. Anyways, I guess I'll have to go back and read that book now to really correct myself or to get a better understanding of it. Definitely an interesting read. Like I said, I felt like I was in the deep end of the pool. But that idea about language is really interesting, and I don't think that. I think it's kind of proven that gorillas don't have that organ, as it were. They just or that organ is so atrophied or so tiny for them that it's a little bit there, but it's not just lacking a vocabulary, a system of symbols to create words is not what they lack. Right. So for me, the book Congo sort of suffered from that because I really felt like it was a big leap. To sort of jump into this. Well, gorillas are basically human beings. They're just as intelligent as human beings. They simply lack the thousands of years of culture and the wide vocabulary and the sort of like the process of natural selection, so to speak, of like slightly bigger brain organs or language organs, as it were, to be able to think. So again, it was definitely colored my whole perspective of the second half of the book. But that's not necessarily what the problem with the book is. It was just something that I was like, well, okay. The issue I have with the book is that it tries to present itself as this sort of like a King Solomon's Mine, which I actually also read, but I'm not going to talk about very much here. This sort of like adventure into the dark part of Africa, right? The book addresses that too, and I think actually it's very respectful in a lot of ways. I'll just point that out. It tries to be that, but the thing is that a lot of times when I was reading the book, it felt like I was reading an abridged version, and I'm not. So it just felt like things were just very skimmed over. Like there wasn't, like it would tell you that someone felt a certain way. Like at one point, one of the main characters, like she cries because of something that happens. And it just felt like the whole like tears and being sad and crying just came out of nowhere. And then it's like boom, and she cried and it closes back up and that's it. And you don't see any more of her internal emotions or anything. It's kind of, the book sort of presents itself in a sense, sort of like like a dossier, like information that was gathered after this event, this Congo expedition that they have is the central part of the story. I know I haven't even talked about what the story's about yet, sorry. But this Congo expedition is sort of presented like like someone's interviewed these people and later on kind of come back and compile this work of nonfiction, and that's kind of how the book somewhat presents itself. I don't think it does it very well because you don't. It's like you get these like flashes of emotion that it's trying to do, but you don't get any of the explanation behind it. So it's just like she was sad or he was angry, and you get very little behind that, and it just didn't work. You know, it reminded me of a book I very briefly and somewhat ashamed that my review of it was so small. A book that I read last year, which was what is the name of the book? Something Hall, Wilding Hall. And I cannot. Elizabeth Hand, I think, is the author. Actually, so let this be like a secondary suggestion. You should go read that book. It's a really, really excellent book. It's presented as a Prague folk rock band in the 70s that goes and records like their second album in this kind of this sort of abandoned mansion in the English countryside, and like had the disappearance of the lead singer. Really good, and the whole book is presented. The reason I'm reading it, the whole book is presented in this sort of interview style where they're interviewing, sort of like a VH1, like Behind the Music or something like that, where they're interviewing the members of the band about what happened that summer and everything else. And that's a really great example of an interview style story that is done just so expertly. And it, you know, and that folk rock and prog rock can be very earnest and sort of embarrassingly silly sometimes in its sort of pretentiousness. But that book never ever falls into the trap of feeling like that. It just feels it's such a good book. It's not a particularly frightening book. It's definitely a creepy or eerie book. Really strongly recommend that book. Elizabeth Hand's Wilding Hall. Such a wonderful read. Really recommend it. But it really just showed me here in Congo how poorly that interview style or this sort of dossier or this sort of like collection of interviews brought together to create a file that you or the reader are experiencing. It kind of showed me that human side of it was very weak in this. The technology side is where it's really strong. Well, that's okay. But it definitely just felt like it was an abridged version of the book a lot of times. A lot of times I really felt like there should be more here. I should be reading. There seems like there needs to be more material here. This isn't enough. You know, this event happens, and it seems like it should be a cool and exciting event, but it just felt maybe glossed over or not really dealt with, or there's not enough buildup. There's not like enough narrative there. It's just sort of like a recounting of the factual events, and it's sort of like lets all the air out of everything. One character is presented as sort of like a dangerous person who's going to lead this expedition into Africa. He kind of like lives like on the edge of the law type stuff. That stuff is never really meaningfully addressed or dealt with. The female lead in the story is like presented as this very highly competent person who's going to lead this expedition, and then she sort of like is pushed by the wayside, and you don't really see very much. You get like these flashes of like her having a strong emotion, or her doing this thing, or being very motivated and very intense, you know, sort of at the potential expense of everyone else. You get these experiences, you get these flashes of her doing those things, but you don't really, it doesn't feel like you've built to that moment. It just feels like it was told to you. Like you're reading a Wikipedia file. That's a little harsh, but it does kind of have that. Kind of moved away from rating books. Not that I mean, I still kind of rate them in my head, but I'm not really explicitly rating it. But I guess if somebody said, well, what would you rate it? I'd say maybe a mid-5 or a 6. Not the writing isn't bad. It's just that it feels as though there's parts of the book that just aren't there, or that there's not enough there. And so it made for a sort of underwhelming reading experience. I think at the time it might have been good because it showcased a lot of the science and technology, and it's sort of a much more maybe I'm a little desensitized because we have so much has happened, so much more information has come out about Africa and African animals and wildlife, and and the Congo and everything in the meantime, that maybe this book was giving out like pearls of wisdom, so to speak, at the time it was written. And I definitely have that impression that there was some of this information was very newish or very, not very widely spread. So that's kind of cool. But I'm not going to say it didn't age well, but it wasn't a revelation for me anymore. So then the burden of the read fell upon the narrative and the experience and the human side, which was lacking. I think I would read another Michael Crichton book. I just wouldn't be in a big hurry. And it makes me wonder what Jurassic Park would be like, because I get just what I know from the movie and everything makes me think, probably a similar experience. Again, kind of like probably Michael Crichton hypothesizing about different dinosaurs, and probably a lot of talk about the process of how they would extract the DNA, which is brilliant and interesting and very, entertaining. It was entertaining in Congo for stuff like that. But it's also archaic, and I think in that case too it might be archaic for Jurassic Park. So I wonder if the human element, the action and emotion, really holds up. I guess I just don't know. I mean, I have to feel that the portrayals of the actors in Jurassic Park make up a large part of sort of fleshing that movie out and making it so endearing. Maybe not the science and the interesting ideas about dinosaurs, which a lot of which are sort of like common tropes now, right? I mean, like a lot of the stuff that we think about dinosaurs kind of now is sort of strangely influenced by that movie. I guess I should say a little bit of what the book's about. So the idea of the book is that there's these, what should I say, there's a organization called ERTS, which really wants to get to the Congo to get a thing, which I don't know that it matters if I say it, but I just won't. There's a resource in the Congo that they really want. They're in competition with another group to get there first and discover it first, and to so they can have access to it. And part of that one previous expedition gets like wiped out. They're trying to figure out. They think that there's something going on there with gorillas, and then they take this gorilla who is being taught sign language by a zoologist / scientist in America. They take this guy and that gorilla Amy with them, with the hope that Amy could communicate with these gorillas that they think are there, that they think might be intelligent. I did think the organization ERTS, I think it's called, I can't remember what ERTS stands for, but I thought it was a little how would you say, a little too benevolent for such a large organization. Right? I just had a hard time buying that this big organization was a big player, big money, big player, high profile, intense, really going for the, for those prizes, so to speak, spending all this money to go to the Congo to get this thing. I had a hard time believing that they were so benevolent. Not that they're super benevolent, but that they were as benevolent as they were. So, okay. It's what it is. Okay, so that was Congo. Again, okay book. If you like Crichton, if you've read other Crichton stuff and you liked, I think that this book would be okay. I don't think it'll be your top book, but I think you'd probably like it. I think there's some interesting things to say. I just feel that it's a little dated. And I think that when the science part isn't there to support it, when there's not, like, this isn't really cutting edge science at all anymore, none of it is. When that falls away, it makes the book less useful or less entertaining, because now it's just a story which I feel like was very secondary in the writing process to the science side. And I guess that's sort of the downside to books that focus very heavily on technology and science, is that it dates itself. So, I mean, the book was probably very successful when it came out. And I just don't know if it's aged very well because of that. And that's just sort of the nature of the beast. Although, I mean, honestly, how many books, 30, 40, 50 years later are really books that would still hold up? Not very many. I would say there's a number of books, like probably, what is this, 2023? I mean, how many 2023 books do you think, any book that came out this year, how many of those books do you think, honestly, in 50 years, anybody would read? Maybe one or two. I don't even know what those books would be. I've not kept up with current books. Probably not books that you love. right? Probably not. It's just not. I mean, it's possible, but I mean, probably not a book that I love. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of any book that came out in the past 4 or 5 years that I think would definitely be like remembered. And I don't. I mean, I'm just posing this question to myself right now, and I have no idea. I don't know of a book offhand, that I couldn't say like, oh yeah, people were in years to come, people will still talk about this. Well, although I will say, I did read, although I don't think it came out this year, I did read, and this is a total goofball thing to say, but I did read Garth Marenghi's Terrortome, and that book was absolutely hilarious. It's not very often I read a book and not within like 6 months, I'm like, man, I'd like to read that book again. Very funny. I think if you liked Hitchhiker's Guide, for example, you would like Garth Marenghi's Terrortome. Really, really funny book. Really, really, really funny. I mean, I love Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. Terrortome was so much fun to read. Definitely the kind of book you could go back and reread again and just love. And the audiobook was wonderful. I mean, I have the audiobook and the hard copy. If you enjoy like comedic, like if you enjoyed Hitchhiker's Guide, or probably like if you like Terry Pratchett, good comedy. I don't think it tries to do the same thing Terry Pratchett did. It's probably closer to Hitchhiker's Guide in that sense. I can't promise that if you like Hitchhiker's Guide, you'll definitely like this book. Hitchhiker's Guide is much more about science fiction, and this is definitely doing the same sort of thing with 80s horror books. That was a wonderful book. Don't ask me how I went from Congo to Terrortome, but yeah, if I was going to say if there's any book that I would hope in 50 years people are still reading, I would hope it's that book, because that book is just wonderful. I mean, it was just a real joy to read. It's not very often I'm like, there's this one part of this book, let me tell you about it. That book was the one. So I love that book. I really don't think I pushed it or said it how much I loved it enough when I did my review video 4 or 5 months ago. So, well, okay. So there's something for, I'm recording this September 1st. I don't know that I'm going to publish it today, but I'm definitely going to try and get all these books out. I've got like 13 or 14 books that I've read in the meantime. A lot of stuff to talk about. It's good to be back. Took the summer off unintentionally. Segue again one more time. Maybe I do talk about it on here sometimes. I talk about like tabletop gaming, and I have messed around before with the blog, and I kind of like did mess with it again. I don't think I want to go back to that one, but I'm probably going to make a new blog, and I might do stuff where I talk about it there, just because, honestly, just because I want to. And I'm debating making a second channel where I talk about gaming stuff. I don't really want to do what a lot of other people do, because I feel like they do a great job of it, but there's just stuff I want to talk about that's tabletop gaming stuff, and I've got that. That's where a lot of my energy has been, my head has been for the summer, playing games with the kids and just thinking about that stuff. So seems like, well, I mean, I'm thinking about it. I could put that energy to use. Man, I think I'm going to be eaten alive out here. Thanks for watching. My name is Virgil. I didn't start off that way. This has been Literally Books. Appreciate your time. Hopefully I don't know what to say about Congo. Go read Terrortome. That was a good book. Talos Principle, great game. Actually wanted to do it. This segue again. No segues. I might do a second chance. I also know computer games. Maybe I might do a thing where I do stuff with that, but it would again be another channel. Not on here. I don't want to deviate from this, and I don't want to. If I want to, I don't need anything to tell me I want to talk about a book or make a video about a book. But there could be droughts where I'm like, well, I just didn't really feel like making a video, and that's what it's been for a while. Just didn't feel like making one. I'm like, I don't want to try and force myself and kind of use that energy up. So maybe something on tabletop gaming, maybe something on computer gaming, maybe a little bit on board gaming. Not much. I mean, I like board games, but I don't know that I got a lot to say about them. I don't know. I'm not, I don't know. I lean more towards the tabletop RPG type stuff. I guess I'll put like, one more thing. This is totally, like, I made an Instagram for this channel, and I did a little bit on there, and I haven't been on Instagram in a long time, and I realized something. I fucking hate Instagram. I mean, I just hate it. I don't like that at all. My problem with Instagram is that everything feels so fake. I'll probably still put stuff up there every once in a while, but in general, Instagram, not a huge fan. Just an observation, something to tell you. Instagram, I'm looking at these bugs over here thinking, that thing is going to come over here and just chomp on me when I'm talking. I'm going to have to act like nothing happened. Yeah, Instagram, I don't know. I don't really like it, but whatever. But probably do a blog on Blogger. I've done that before. That's cool. I kind of like it. I just kind of mess around. I guess I'll put some up if I do it. Yeah, I will. Sure, I'll make myself. Okay. That probably get edited down. That's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. Hanging out with me. I got more books to talk about. See ya. Bye.